You're listening to the Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters Podcast, the place where faith, music, and life intersect. We exist to help Christian indie artists and songwriters just like you get songs heard. Hey, I'm here with my friend Aryn Michelle coming to us live from Texas. How's it going this morning, Aryn?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we were just talking. We met almost 4 long years ago, and wow, things have changed in 4 years in the world, especially with this past 2020. But
quite a bit.
Yeah. So we got to write. We were a part of a Kingdom Songs event together back in the day. And now it's been awesome to see you releasing tons of music and staying on top of the game with modern vibes and doing everything you're doing. So I'm excited personally to hear what God's been doing in your journey and then also share with everybody. So with that in mind, where did this all kind of start? Where did music kind of begin for you?
Yeah. Well, I have a pretty traditional story, I think, for people who are indie Christian songwriters. I grew up in the church. I'm a pastor's kid, and I knew pretty early on that I could sing. And so obviously I knew that the Lord had destined me to become the next Jackie Velasquez, which might date me a little bit. But, and then, so I just, sang all the time in church. A big turning point for me came, I was about 15 years old, and I talked my mom into taking me to this singing competition in Oklahoma City, of all places, for this indie record label that was kind of talent scouting. And I picked like the most difficult CeCe Winans song I could think of to sing, which was tragic. And probably like all of those songs are hard to sing. Oh man. And needless to say, I did not win the competition, but it was really one of those key messages that you learn a lot more from the losses, because when I was there at the competition, the woman who won was a young woman who, she not only was a great singer, but she performed an original song that she wrote, and she accompanied herself on the piano. And this just like blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I could write my own songs. I could play for myself. I don't have to use tracks. Like that was just my default thing was, well, that's what you do. You use tracks and you sing in church. And so that was a huge turning point for me. So that's where I started writing my own music, kept writing my own music through undergrad and grad school, trying to figure out what that looked like. So let's see. So I made my first kind of official recording when I was in grad school at Berkeley. And I went through a period where I never walked away from my faith at all, but I kind of got disenfranchised with Christian music establishment. I read a lot of Charlie Peacock and other guys who are, trying to like encouraging Christian creatives to consider creative work from a Christian worldview, but to be a light in the dark kind of places. So to not write explicitly Christian music, that there was work to be done in that arena. And so the first two full albums that I recorded as an artist were from a Christian perspective, but they were definitely what would be labeled as just secular pop music. Had a band for a little while and got to play some really cool gigs. But I got to a point in my career where I felt like I just kept hitting a wall. And that was also a really essential turning point for me. I started having these conversations with my dad, who I mentioned is a pastor. So he's like full of wisdom and and knowledge.
And dad.
Yeah, absolutely. And he said, really through a series of just short conversations that really changed my life, he said, you're making good music, but you feel like you're hitting a wall. You're not making breakthrough. Have you stopped to consider, how has God uniquely gifted you? Who are you? Who has he created you to be? What is your background? What is your influence? Where do you speak? And people think, yeah, you have wisdom in that spot. And everything just kind of like clicked into place for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've tried to be this person that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a rock star. I mean, I was out there playing the Curtain Club and The Door and Deep Ellum in Dallas, trying to hold this rock band together. I was spiking my hair and wearing the jewelry and the boots and the mini skirts, and I was doing the thing, and I was having a blast doing it. But that's not who God created me to be. I am a preacher's kid. My fans who have followed me since the beginning are church people. They're like church people who know the Bible well, and they didn't want to come to a club in Deep Ellum at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. But more than that, like what I really know well from the beginning, because I was raised in a church by pastors, I know the Bible. And what I have a passion for writing is like deep truths about the Christian life. And so as much as I pushed against it for so long, like, God, I don't want to be a Christian artist. That's who he created me to be. He created me to be a person to write songs that encourage people of faith. And so just learning that, I had been trying to serve God the way I wanted him to use me instead of asking God, how do you want to use me? And this was so huge for me. So that's when I made kind of a hard shift towards writing explicitly faith-based music. So yeah, so then from there, and please feel free to stop me if I'm just droning on and on. But
no, it's great. It was just reminding me because I'm reading The Reset, the Jeremy Riddle book, and
okay, great.
I just went through that chapter about his was a little different, but from 17 to 22. He was pushing the secular rock band thing because he wanted to be a rock star. I think dad was a pastor too. And then, after 5 years of chasing that, he never felt fully fulfilled by doing that for whatever reason. But then through a series of small conversations, it kind of started this thing where he realized he was uniquely made to do this worship thing. And then once he committed to that, then the song started flowing in a way that he'd never experienced before. Right. Did you experience something similar like that once you kind of made that switch in your heart?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't just writing songs. I was writing with a purpose and a vision, and the ideas were clearer. And not just like the overall message of scripture. It was just like the spark of creativity was clearer. Like I could see it from beginning, to end, like, oh, this is the idea that I'm chasing. So so that really shifted me lyrically as an artist. And then I guess the next part of my journey was, landing like, okay, now I know my zone lyrically with what I'm trying to accomplish as an artist in the whole. But now I got to figure out about the music. And that was another wrestling, I think, for me, because it came down to sorry, I don't know if you can hear my daughter singing in the background.
It's okay. She's just practicing for her journey. That's all.
She is a singing, dancing girl. Anyways, awesome. But so it came down to, again, it's like one of these refocusings of who has God made you to be? And so I did the first album that I did that was explicitly faith-based. People can still find the two albums before that I released that were just more like secular pop music. You can't find them. So if anyone still has a CD player, they're like vintage now. So you can only find them used in like random places. Otherwise, you can't find them online. But so the oldest album I have up online is called Depth. And that's one that I did. That was my first faith-based project. But it was very folksy, Americana, rootsy. The recording was really cool. It was like I hired 6 players to do 3 days straight in the studio. We all played at the same time. Not even to a click track. It was like very organic and cool. It was a lot of fun, but I feel like I had been told by industry people that I trusted their opinion. Like, this is your musical lane. This is what you sing the best. So I was like, yeah, okay, let's do that. Sure. I like that. Let's Alison Krauss kind of sound.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I looked back on it and I enjoyed the process, but that's not like the kind of music that I think it's great, but it's not the kind of music that I listen to that really like gives me spark and passion. And so then the next project I did after that was called The Realest Thing. And it was a concept album based on Christian apologetics, where each of the different songs represented a different philosophical argument for the existence of God. And then I worked with this producer, his name's Chad Crothers, who, do you know Chad?
I don't know if I know Chad, but I'd like to.
He's a Nashville guy. Yeah, you need to hook up with him. Cool. He is good people. But he like got all my references and got like my weird music stuff that I like that's kind of French pop. And I had a blast doing that. And so then I did another EP back with the folk thing. I was like, no. Everybody told me I need to do the folk thing. And then the project I'm releasing right now is back to like the kind of on the fringe indie pop. And so through a lot of soul searching, I think, and this is a message I'd love to share with people, it's not about what you can do, and it's not necessarily about what people think you should be as an artist. Even if people with wisdom are telling you this is what's going to make you most commercially successful, to me personally, I think you've got to go where the spark and the passion lie that God has given you. And sometimes that's not going to be the most commercially successful place, but it is going to be the place where you reach like the most genuine, true art with integrity. So I think I finally picked my lane. I'm sticking with the indie pop kind of
Yeah.
vibe. So I hope people respond to that. But I'm kind of at the point of freedom where I'm like, take it or leave it. If you like it, great. If you don't, this is what I'm called to do. So I'm doing it.
Wow. No, that takes a definite level of maturity, and walking that road for a while because, especially as we start out, we're like, wait a minute, you're an industry person. You're actually talking to me. Whatever you want, I'll just do that thing forever.
Exactly. It's such a journey. Yeah, for sure.
And it actually brought to mind James for me, like consider trials of all kinds, pure joy, through testing your faith, perseverance, and character. So like, when I read that verse, I'm like, okay, I'm like having a rough time. So this is a trial, but like trials don't have to be like the worst case scenario. They could be like taking a run at some folk Americana thing and seeing what that's like. And through the testing of your faith, the perseverance of that, it produces character and then ultimately lacking nothing. So when you say take it or leave it, you're lacking nothing in your pursuit of this journey because you know that like this is what lights you up the most. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you have to like. What else? Like I don't know all the theology behind this, but I feel like okay, what is passion? I know that there's definitely differencing opinions of that, but like if we do something and it makes us feel alive, I have to think that is what God put in us to make us feel alive and give glory back to Him through that thing.
Yeah.
So like if you're able to do that through this indie pop thing and feel more excited about that than anything else, musically, then of course that's what you should do. And it'll reach the people it's supposed to reach because if God put it in you, then it's part of why you're here and it's going to reach who it needs to reach through Him. So I love that. And something, a little different side of it is there's a dynamic and there's a tension because, reading your bio and stuff, like seeing you're obviously very intentional about head and heart, Yeah. So like I wanted to talk about that because the format that you've been brought, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, you're brought to a format which is very, this sounds good. I don't really care about anything else. I like it. Pop. That's what pop is. But then you're called to like dig deep, deep, deep wells and like stuff that people don't even talk about and like hymns sometimes. So like, what has that tension been like with you with this deep, rich, like theology behind with like a candy coated felt top? Like talk about that.
No, that's good. I had a marketing guy tell me, he was like, wow, you just like, he was like this kind of emotive, but like deep pop stuff. You're looking at fringe audience because a lot of people are going to hear it and be like, I don't really understand what's going on there. They're not quite ready for it. Yeah. I think kind of going back to what you were saying, like I just decided that my job is to control. I had a pastor once tell me, we as believers control the direction. We keep our eyes on Jesus. And God controls the distance. And I was like, yes, that's what it is. Yeah. Like we do what we're supposed to do. We steward the gifts God's given us and God is responsible for where it goes. And so definitely when you're dealing with pop music, like I cannot dealing with like detailed, emotive, deep, lyrical pop music, like I can't define success in worldly terms. Like I can't. And I'm totally freed from that. So if I'm obsessively counting Spotify streams or like trying to seek a deal, and I'm not saying these things are bad for people to have reach. I'm not like shunning success on a worldly level and saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying our heart can't be caught up in that or we're just going to be disappointed, especially when you choose like fringe pop, like you're just going to be disappointed if what you're looking for is that worldly, like congratulations of your success. And so when you're talking about the theology of it, so I think success is defined in obedience in doing what God has told you to do. And a few weeks ago, I was like, I wonder if if the word success is anywhere in there. And the only where I could find it, I'm not a scholar, but the only where I could find it in the original language was in Joshua 1:8. And this verse says, I wrote it down because I thought it'd be fun to share. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. So that's the only success that I could find is meditating on God's word and like trying to figure out how He wants us to live our lives. I'm like, that's what success is. That's what God has said success is. Just know my word, do what I've told you to do. And so I'm like, it's like absolute freedom, especially for us who are independent artists. Like, just have the freedom to do what God has called you to do. And if the world thinks it's great, Well, maybe it's a blessing. Sometimes I think it makes it more difficult, and so especially like I know we talked about a little earlier before we hopped on the call that gets chasing after worldly success in music gets so more complicated when you have like deep life things happening and commitments.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a mother of 4. My kids are 10, 8, 5, and almost 3. And so when you're managing this passion for music and all these
Mm-hmm.
other life things, those are gifts and their priorities and their callings to steward. And so that really shifts the focus on where we have to run after that success.
Yeah, something I was talking to Susie about earlier. It's like when you're younger, it's not like when you get a little older or down the road, I should say, I'm speaking to myself here, like, it's not that you don't have the ability to do those things. And it's just like your time is segmented in such a different way. Like when I was a teenager, I could literally play bass in my room for 5 hours and like still have like 10 hours to do nothing, like you have so much more time, but you don't possess like necessarily the determination. You may, and you can. I think that maybe the ones that get it younger, they just have that gifting early on, whether, however they choose to use it. But like I really want to get better at piano. I probably said that in like 20 episodes so far, but like digging in, and I just need to do it, hold myself accountable. But like digging in, it's like I have so many other things that have to happen that it can't sit on top of the priority list. So what are some ways, like maybe practically and tactically, that you've been able to, have 4 kids and have a family and all the things you're doing, but then also because, from our perspective, like you're putting out great music on a consistent basis. That means something. You're you're marketing well, and it looks like you are doing it right. And you are. So like, what are the ways that what you've been able to actually navigate that with your current life season?
Yeah. I'm going to totally get into some practical tips. I think that will be helpful. But before we leave the managing life commitments, I felt like when we talked about scheduling this interview, I felt like this is the thing I wanted to say to your people who listen to this, who are doing indie stuff, but who might be like me. Maybe you're a little older, you're married, you have kids, you have a full-time job outside of music, or, you're trying to balance church work and personal music work. And I know there's been several times in my journey that I've just wanted to turn my back on the whole music thing and quit, because it's gotten so hard and it feels like nobody cares. And I'm like spending all my money on this and I'm spending all my time. And I'm like, Lord, I don't want to do this anymore. It would just be so easy to pack that phase of my life away and said, oh, I did music for a while, but now it's over. And I just want to speak to anyone who's listening. If God has put that passion in you to create, that is something that you are called to steward. You can't quit. You can't turn your back on it and set it down because it gets too hard. We can't bury our talents, literally our talents in the sand. So I just want to encourage anyone that's out there listening saying, maybe this is not my thing. If God has put it in your heart as your passion, look, it's your thing. And it doesn't matter what other people say, whether you get a record deal, it doesn't matter, but you need to keep going, because kind of what we were talking about earlier, like God is a creator. And in the beginning, it says he created, and then it says shortly thereafter that we are made in his image. But at that point in scripture, the only thing we know about God is that he creates things. And that's the very beginning. Right. And so we are the image bearers. And so we are creators. So if you have been uniquely gifted to create things out of nothing, go forth and do it and find freedom. I'm not trying to get too emotional, but I just want to encourage people to keep going. So we're 100%
about that. So thank you for sharing that. That's important.
Yeah. And so, okay. So then the question is well, how do you do that? I think first of all, for me personally, I kind of work in seasons, and I have a very supportive husband who, if I'm like this morning, I'm like, I have a podcast interview and then I need to record 3 videos. And he's like, no problem. I will occupy the kids. And so I'd say, work with people in your life, whether it's like your mom or friend or your spouse, and just try to save up those times and then work efficiently in those chunks. Like this week's really busy for me, but next week I'm going to kind of put things on the back burner. It's not putting things on the back burner for years, but it's like you're saying, you have to balance all those priorities in your life. You can't totally neglect one or the other. Yeah. And so that's like the start of how I do. I don't have a regimented schedule of I must do songwriting from 10 to 11 and then I must have co-writing from 11 to 2. That's just not real for me. So then how do you release music this way? So these are some things that I've done in the last year or two that I think are super efficient ways to be able to release songs as an artist without totally burning yourself out. And I love, and this is kind of an aside, but I love the idea of concept albums. So I've done 2 albums that way. So I would encourage anyone out there that might feel like they're going through a drought, writing wise, to consider concept albums. Basically just what they are is creating a whole work of music based on one particular idea. So like the one I did on the Realist thing was all the songs were about apologetics. And this album that I'm releasing right now as singles is called Pariah. And each one of the songs is about a biblical person in their time of life where they felt like an outcast. And because here's one of the reasons why, because when you have a little bit of time to write, or in those rare chances when you get to co-write, you can come into the room saying, hey, I'm working toward this project. Here's the idea. And you can hit the ground running to make your writing time more efficient. Because when you come with a co-write, it's like, here's my idea. I've got 3 songs written. I really need a ballad. And what do you think about doing a song about Joseph or David? Then was like, oh yeah, we're not sitting around spending 45 minutes fleshing out every potential idea, which is fun, but sometimes it's not always practical. So I think concept albums have been great for me. Co-writing has been great for me to learn from other people, and to get excited about writing more consistently. And then what I did with this last project, so there's all this pressure right nowadays to release a new single every 6 to 8 weeks. And you're like, oh my gosh, how do I have the time to do that? And so what I did instead, so I began the recording process for Pariah last March. I'd spent the year and a half before that writing all the songs. And then I got with my producer. I've like found my guy. Chad is my guy now. As long as he will keep making records for me, he's my guy. And that would be another encouragement I'd have for people. Like, keep working with different producers. I've probably worked with 5 or 6 producers now over my life as an artist. And eventually you'll probably find someone that you're like, it clicks with. Like, they get me, I get them, we trust each other. So anyways, I called Chad in March. I said, Chad, I've got an idea for something weird. And he was like, I'm game. Because he usually is like really excited to do like, stuff with like interesting sounds and textures that you don't, that are not like the basic ones that you hear a lot. Get a little crazy. But so I said, it's 10 songs and I had all the songs. And so then we work, like, it was very different than the organic folk thing. So it wasn't like 6 guys in a room all recording together, no click track, which is wild for the editing. But basically it was just me and him, and he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he, sometimes will hire people if he really needs something specific. But I'd send him a chunk of songs, 3 songs at a time, and then all the references. So, and that was super helpful. That's something I know we're going to get to what to tell my younger self. When you're going to work with a producer, like say, okay, here's the song. I'd send him a work tape, basic vocal, chord chart, piano. And, but then I'd say, I love the vibe from this Kimbra song. I love the bass line from this Ed Sheeran song. I love the kind of vocal texture of this Billie Eilish song. And so then as he's starting to create the track, he knows what's in my brain. He's not just trying to like make something up that I'm not going to like, because I've really thought about how I want the song to sound. So then we worked, we created tracks for all 10 of those songs. And then I went up to Nashville one time for 3 days and recorded vocals on all 10 of the songs in 3 days. So this is, again, about like the efficiency, is like minimizing my out of town trips, because that's expensive and it takes a lot of time. Recorded vocals for 10, which is a little taxing, but honestly, like, it's a blast. Like, I love doing studio stuff. Like, I'm like, let's do it. I was like pure adrenaline, and it was awesome. You get in this headspace and you're like feeling super creative. So then after that recording, fully committed. Yeah, just go all in. And that's how you got to kind of do it when you're, living this life where you got lots of priorities. You just got to turn it on. So then did all that in August, and then spent from August to December mixing, mastering, all that stuff. So now I have 10 songs that are done. So in the past, like up until a couple years ago, you just dump it out. Like, here's my album, press the CD, it's done. And then you have nothing to talk about. And so what I've done instead
for a long time.
Right. Like all this work. And it's like, well, here it is. It's done. And that's not digitally like the way people consume music anymore. So what I'm doing is I'm just dripping out the album, basically one single at a time. They're all done, and I did one photo shoot, but like with a whole lot of different outfits. So I could have multiple cover images for those different singles as I release them. It's also a good way to stretch your marketing money because I'm doing a Spotify marketing campaign, but I only spend money on one song at a time. And then I can kind of dictate, well, this song is the best song on the project. I'm going to spend more money on that and then kind of build the rest of it up. Oh, and so here's my last thing about this whole process that I thought was cool that helped me was, recording music is expensive. I mean, even though it's like super accessible, way more accessible than it used to be, it still takes money if you're hiring someone that's doing it for a living, that's good at their job, mixing and mastering and photo shoots and graphic design and stuff that you need when you're releasing stuff at that level. And so in the past, when, decades ago, when people still bought CDs, it was just like 5 years ago, everything has changed. But that's how I made my money. Yeah. Like, I mainly do house concerts and so I wouldn't make a whole lot of money from ticket sales, but I would make lots of my money from CD sales after, I'd play whatever women's event at a church and they'd give me a little bit of an honorarium, but I'd make most of my money selling CDs and I don't make any money selling CDs anymore. And that was the money that I used to record my next project. And so I'm like, how do I make money? Especially with COVID, like now I'm not even getting any money to perform for the last year. And so what I decided to do is I've done a lot of crowdfunding in the past. I've probably done 4 or 5 different crowdfunding campaigns, but I'm like, what do I give people? Because even in the past, the perk was getting the CD, like the exclusive digipack, blah, blah, blah.
The merch side of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But so now what I decided to do, which works with the dripping thing, is that if people gave me just at a minimum $10 to support the album, to raise money to record it, then when it was done, they got the whole thing. Like like they would have done in the past, like, $10 for a CD or for an iTunes download, but everybody else has to wait for a whole year to hear all of it. So this is like a perk for my super fans who want to hear the whole thing. They want to listen to it as a unit. They don't want to wait a year to get all the songs. And it's just $10. So it's like, well, I'm paying for what I would have paid for. And then I can still raise some money up front and crowdfund, give people something they want, and then not have it take years for me to raise enough money to record a project. So that worked really well. That would be something I'd encourage people to do. Think about recording in big chunks and then like dripping it out, not even just for the music money side of it, but for the social media content side of it. Like, it's awesome. Sure. Like, every 6 weeks, I have a new song to like talk about, make videos about, make little images about. And so it gives me, I'm not like racking my brain thinking, okay, what am I going to, I want to like talk to my fans, but I don't want to just post another picture of me like, I don't know, cleaning the kitchen, because that's what I'm doing today. Which is fine. I mean, I think some of that real life stuff is good, but like, I don't want my whole Instagram to be.
Yeah. You can mix it up though, right?
Mom stuff. Yeah. Which is fun. But anyway, so I think those are some things that I've done in this last project that have worked well and have helped me keep up this level of professionalism that I strive for, an excellence that I strive for, without like totally consuming me schedule wise and money wise.
Man, there's a lot there. So that's some good stuff. But the thing that God keep bringing to mind is its intention. Yeah. Right? Like, you started, I mean, this project has been 2.5 years or 3.5 years in the making, right? Like from the time you started writing. But you've been not necessarily knowing like on this exact day, I'm going to release the 3rd single from this exact, like, it's not like that fine tuned, but even down to co-writing, like, because of I love what you said about the co-writing aspect. That's why personally, like, I always bring like track ideas to co-writes now. Yeah. Because like you said, it's fun and it's cool, and there's a time and a place for sure to just like write and just see what happens in the moment. But I'm like, okay, if we spend the first 45 minutes kind of chasing a vibe that could drastically change because we're just playing acoustic guitars or piano, like here's at least a vibe that we can start with. It's all MIDI, we can move stuff around, but like I love that you said that. Like here's a title, here's a vibe, and then the next part of it, you said the references. I just did some content last week about the importance of referencing, and like that's exactly what you said. Like you know what you're after, so instead of trying to guess and hope, and you do kind of widen the gap of potential disappointment, because if you're not able to communicate exactly what you're thinking, or at least a general zone, then if it comes back totally wrong, you know, I'm air quoting that, you're like, oh man, we got to kind of start this over. You know, but you're like, hey, I've got, you know, this Ed Sheeran bass line with this, you know, this thing, like, then it's like, okay, like, because like you said, when you find your guy, when you find your Chad out there, like, then he gets it too. So then once you give him the tools he needs, it's like, you're probably going to get, every time you probably put a track together, probably like exceeded your expectations, I would imagine, because he's able to take his skill based off but it's because you're giving him stuff up front to really help that.
Oh no, I was going to say another reason why it's great to record in big chunks of songs, you know, 3, 5, 10 songs, because if you're working with someone, they can be like, okay, we've got these 4 songs that have this vibe, and I send him something. He's like, this is not going to work. This is too classic rock. Like, cause he knows everything else that we're trying to make. And then there's been a few, one time I remember he sent me something and I was like, dude, this is like, I've got like hard Enya feels and this is like not me. And he was like, I'm offended, but okay, I'll start this one over. But you know, when you have that, when you're working with a broader vision, then you can see the things coming that are going to be potential trouble spots and money pits later on to fix.
And that's all through that intention, you know? And then even like, I love that you said when you did your photo shoot, your one photo shoot, you came with, you know, a bunch of different outfits. So that way that could be so versatile, you know, not just like, okay, cool, we've got all the same shirt in this, so we can only use it like 5 times. But now you can spread that out for probably the entirety of the release, right? Because it's all different. Now, and it's consistent branding because it's the same setup, same lighting, whatever, like, but they're different enough to where it can live that whole cycle. And then that last part about, I mean, that's genius. Like, okay, $10 is like the entry level for crowdfunding, which is exactly what it would cost to go to Best Buy back in the day and buy your CD. So they are buying your CD. They're getting it right away. They're just not getting to hold it in their hand, but the process is the same. So then they get that experience right up front, the way that you intended it. But then you also get to benefit from them buying a CD that doesn't exist, you know, which will help fund the next thing that you know, are working on. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot there that I feel like that's an amazing formula. You know, I use that term loosely to, you know, be able to do that where you've got, you know, you can clean your kitchen, you know, and a bunch of times, but you've got all this other stuff going to where that's happening in the background. So where you don't have to be like, oh man, I wish I could do another photo shoot, but I don't have the budget for it now. But it's like, nope, already kind of did that for this. So we're good. You just have to set that up in advance. So that's amazing. So, I mean, there's so much there. Now, do you have like a specific type or piece of advice that you would tell to your younger, you know, Aryn back in the day before you came to this genius perspective? Now, you know, what kind of got you there?
I'm gonna quote you on that. Brian Bolivar says, I'm a genius.
I mean, it's just the facts. Come on, people.
I think the only thing, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I would let on a whole lot to my younger self, because I think part of wisdom, a lot of wisdom comes from the experience, you know, and that journey and living it out. I think I would maybe just encourage myself to check myself more. Really, that first thing we talked about before I cast vision for what I want to do, make sure I'm consistently staying in the word, spending time in prayer, asking God, is this what you want me to do? Is this what you've gifted me for? And, you know, a lot of times it's not going to be a holy letter sent in the mail with it all written out. But
the
it's
golden
just
stamp.
Right. It's just that heart and that attitude of laying your own ambition down at the foot of the cross and saying, okay, Jesus, this is who you've made me to be. What do you want me to do? I think, you know, I came out with some funky little pop things in the beginning, but maybe I could have avoided some of some of those steps maybe saved a few years of wrestling if I would have been more concerned about approaching this holistically, spiritually as a person from the beginning, and not kind of separated my artist life and ambitions from who God had created me to be. So
yeah. Seek first the kingdom, and then all these things will be added unto you, right?
Man, that's the truth. Oh, wait, you know what? Our pastor at our church the other day, I tend to be, I'm a little snooty about, like, I prefer the NASB because I'm a weirdo. And that's what I was raised reading. So when anybody reads from the Message, I'm like, oh, the Message. But he read, but you know, the more and more I get passages read over me in the Message, I'm like, yeah, the Message. Sometimes it has some really awesome things to say. And he read this verse from Galatians 6:4 from the Message version yesterday in his sermon. And I wanted to share it with you today because I was like, this is it. This is the life verse, I think, for a lot of indie artists. It says, make a careful exploration of who you are and the work that you have been given, and then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. And don't compare yourself with others. Each of you must take responsibility for doing the creative best you can with your own life. And I was like, slayed. I was like, that's it. That's
wow. Did he drop the mic and walk off the stage after that?
I was just like, inside, I was like, that's exactly how I wanted to say it, you know, and that's it. You got to do the work you've been given, be creative, the best you can be, but don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourself, you know, just keep on that journey. Gosh,
don't be impressed with yourself. That's an incredible thought. What a nice way to say, like, be humble, person, you know, like you're awesome because of me, but don't get too caught up in that and keep moving, you know, like, I love that. That's a cool, yeah, that's great. So
the Message.
This has been, the Message, right? So it's not always bad. The Message is always good. It just depends on the context, right? Yeah. So, man, well, this has been so good. Appreciate all of the wisdom and nuggets here that I know myself and then a lot of people will appreciate that. So, you know, you've got more music coming out. So tell people, like, where they can connect with you social media wise, like where do you hang out? And then also, you know, the music coming out next.
So I'm at Aryn Michelle Music, and my name's spelled a little weird. It's Aryn. Aryn Michelle Music on Facebook. I'm Aryn Michelle on Instagram. And those are the main two places. I haven't really gotten into TikTok yet. I'm working on it, but I haven't figured that little strange animal out.
It's something.
It is something. And then, so the next thing, I'm on, all my music is streaming, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. My next song is coming out on April the 16th. It's called Give It All Away. It is a song inspired by the life of Zacchaeus, mostly because I felt like he deserved a song that was cooler than A Wee Little Man Was He. I feel like there's more to unpack there. So I hope people will enjoy that. And then my next big song after that is going to be a song inspired by John the Baptist. And I'm spending most of my budget money on that one. I'm making a music video for that one that'll be coming out late May, early June. So I'm super excited about that. I know, cool. Cedric Israel co-wrote that one. So.
Oh, did he? That means amazing. You know it's good because everything Cedric puts his hand on just turns to gold. Yeah,
I know. So, awesome. but I would love to. I would love to connect to people if they want to send me a message and ask, like, particulars about this kind of stuff, like releasing. I love co-writing. I love friends. So no one who's listening, hesitate. Just give me a message. I'd love to connect.
Cool. And I'll put all the links below so people can instantly click into your world and follow along with it. And that's it's going to be great. So excited to hear those new songs. And before we go, I always like to pray over everybody. So I'm going to pray for you. God, thank you so much for Aryn. Thank you so much for her steadfast focus on you, God. And thank you for the extra creativity and flexibility you've given her to be able to navigate through this journey, serving a family, serving a church, serving a husband, and also serving a calling. That's a hefty order, God. But through your divine provision, God, she's just making it work and inspiring people along the way, God. So we thank you for these songs that she's digging deep to bring new light into these incredible stories and scriptures that you've given us, God. We pray that it reaches people in a new way and ultimately gets people to know you better, God, because that's her heart, God. And we just pray that continues to grow larger and larger as these songs come out, and even beyond this album and the future works that she puts her mind and heart to, God, that they just reach and bless people for your kingdom, God. We thank you so much for her and the time we spent together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And thank you, Brian, for doing this, for the work that you do. It's valuable, and you are connecting people and encouraging people, and I appreciate the work you do so much.
We want to help reach as many Christian indie artists and songwriters as possible, and one way we can do that is with your help. So if you could take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes, that would be so appreciated. This is how the iTunes algorithm will push this content out to more and more Christian indie artists and songwriters. So like I said, if you could just take a couple seconds, leave us a review, that would be so awesome, means so much to us, and we would really appreciate it.